Let's be honest, static KPI are fine until your boss asks, can we see a different matrix? And suddenly you're duplicating visual left and right. In today's video, I'm showing you a smarter way to handle performance tracking. We are unlocking Excel built-in KPI feature inside PowerPivot, so you can build a clean, dynamic visual that actually think with your data. It is faster, more flexible, and fully integrated into your data model. No extra formatting, no duplicating charts, just smart KPI that automatically update when the matrix changes. Hello there, my name is Lynn. I'm a senior data analyst with real-world experience in banking and logistics industry. Over the years, I've helped business go from messy, confusing spreadsheets to simple and clear analysis that actually makes sense. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'd love to share my passion in data analytics with you, so make sure to hit that subscribe button for more data tutorials. This video is a part of an end-to-end data project where we're helping Excel property, a fast-growing property chain, make sense of their disorganized timesheet data and turning it into a compelling, decision-ready visuals. In the previous videos, we've covered a wide range of visuals from basic objects and charts to more advanced ones like waterfall charts and custom gauge charts. We even dive into advanced techniques that let you switch between different measures using a slicer. In today's episode, we are adding another layer of complexity, comparing actual versus target across different dimensions. To visualize this effectively, we need to explore a smarter built-in solution, that is the KPI visual within our data model, PowerPivot. Here's what we'll be covering. We will start with a simple static KPI solution so that you understand how the KPI work inside our PowerPivot data model. Then we will take it a step further and create a dynamic KPI that automatically adjusts when we switch the measures. And finally, as a bonus, I'll show you how to create Heatmap visual, which is perfect for drawing attention to what's really important in your visual. This method is especially useful when we need to slice and dice our data with more than one dimension. Before we dive in, make sure to download the practice file using the link in the description box so you can follow along step by step. I've also added a chapter marker to help you skip to any section that you need. Please feel free to pause, rewind, or rewatch as many times as you like. And if you're just joining this series, I've left the link to the previous episode so that you can catch up from the beginning. Ready to build smarter KPI? Let's dive into it. What we want to visualize here is the actual versus planned performance through the variance rates. And previously, we've used the gauge chart to visualize this type of information in an aggregate, high-level overview. Now, we're adding the store dimension, which also introduces more complexity to our visual. This means that using a separate gauge chart for each store is not an ideal solution. A better way to visualize variance in this type of complex situation is to use a KPI icon. And you might be thinking of conditional formatting. And you are right. These icons and indicator can really help us to quickly identify if the figures is above or below the targets. That is one way to do it. But today we're going advanced. We will be creating these icons within our data model, meaning that this icon will be added directly into the pivot table data model. Now, let's keep the holiday rates for the advanced sections and go straight to the absent rate. Now, select a cell within a pivot table. Now go to PowerPivot ribbon. Normally, this ribbon should be available automatically, but in case you don't see it, what you need to do is to activate it by going to File, Option, Add in, and select the PowerPivot for Excel. and activate it by click OK here. I'm gonna cancel that for now because I've already had this installed. All right, now back in our PowerPivot ribbon, I'm going to create our indicator by using new KPI. The KPI pop-up appear, and here you can set the target for your measure. So the interface looks somewhat similar with the target gauge charts that we have set up before. The KPI's base field is simply the measure you want to assess against your target, and that is the absence rate. Next is to define your target. We know that our target rate is 1.5%, and that is 0.15. Now for the threshold, it will be the same logics as we've done before. So the first threshold will be equal to 0.2, which is 0.015, and the second threshold will be equal to 0.3, that is 3%. So we're going to input here 0.03. And the lower the figures, the better. So we need to go with green, yellow, and red. And for the setup icons, I prefer this style. Does look good. Now hit OK. All right, now we see that there's a new measure added into our pivot table called absence rate status with the value of 1, 0, and -1, which is not very visually appealing right now. Let's go here to the pivot table field. If you scroll all the way down, you can see that the absence rate measure has the traffic icon in front of it. So if I expand this, I can see that the absence rate, which basically is our measure, and a new measure added, which is called status, which is this measure right here. And if I untick it and tick it again, the icon now appear and the result look just like we expected. Pretty straightforward methods, right? Now I'm going to apply the same methodologies for other measure, the compliance rates, and the overtime rates. Alright, now we've successfully created our KPI measure and icon directly in our data model. And this really helps us to draw attention to the important details, and we can easily see which store has performed above, under, or meet the target. I'm going to expand the holiday rate calculation area. Okay, now we're going to visualize this pivot table with the same KPI visual methods like we did with other measures. But this time it is special because our measure is not static. It's changed according to the selection of the slicer. So our KPI visual also needed to be dynamically changed to reflect the selection. Let's see how it's done. Let's insert a new KPI measure. So go to PowerPivot, KPI, new KPI. Now in this KPI pop-up, we want to create a KPI for the holiday flex measure. Next is the target. And this time we will not define the targets as an absolute value, but as a measure. And the measure we want to set as the target is the holiday target flex measure. Now for the threshold, we can see that there is a difference in user interface here. The input value is not a fixed number anymore, but it is as a percentage. So how do we interpret and input the correct value for this threshold? For the upper threshold, we know that our target for the yearly holiday rate is 95%. This is the goal that we want to achieve. So internally, PowerPivot will understand 95% is the base of 100% in the KPI scale. So I'm going to put 100% in the upper threshold here. So anything above the target rate of 95%, like 96 or 97, will be green. Anything below the target rate will be yellow and red according how far the actual rate from the target rate. Now for the lower threshold is a little bit tricky, so I'm going to put a placeholder at 80% here. And head back to Excel to make some calculation so that we understand what is needed for the lower threshold to make our holiday flex measure in sync in both scenario, yearly and year-to-date quarter 3. I'm going to quickly highlight the upper threshold as green and lower threshold as red and add another column called KPI percentage. Now we know that the upper threshold, which is 95%, is our target rate. This always be 100% on the KPI scale. What about the lower threshold? Our rate is 90%, so on a KPI scale, it would be 90% divided by 95%, which gives us 95% on a KPI scale. And this worked very well for our standard scenario where holiday rate is equal to yearly. What happened when we select the year-to-date quarter 3 from the slicer? We can see that the lower threshold of the KPI scale changed to 93%, which reflect the changes between point 2 and 3. But we want this number to be 95 and not 93 so that it is in sync with the difference of the yearly rates. So what can we do? Let's make some quick calculation. Now we know that point 2 has to be 95% compared to point 3. In this case, that is 75%. So point 2 will be 75% multiplied with 95%, and that is 71%. So the step here should not be 5, but it should be 75% minus 71%, that is 4%. Alright, now that we know the logic, how to make the lower threshold of the two measure in sync, we just need to plug that into the model. So I'm simply going to change the step here into 4%. Now go to Data, click Refresh All so that our model reflects the change in the underlying data. As you can see, the step is as 4% and the lower threshold is now changed to 95% in the scenario where the measure is the year-to-date quarter 3. Now we need to reflect the lower threshold to our KPI. So let's go back to PowerPivot. In KPI, Manage KPI, select the Holiday Rate Flex KPI and click on Edit. Now adjust the lower threshold to 95%. We want the color to be red, yellow, and green. And choose this icon style for consistency purpose. Now hit OK. Close this window and go back to Excel. Now activate the pivot field lists. Now search for our KPI measure. Here in the status, click and unclick to activate the icon. And that's it. We've managed to insert the KPI icon to help end user quickly interpret the number. Better, we allow users to flexibly switch between different measures for deeper insights. And that's exactly what we wanted. So far, we've been tracking performance from a high-level overview using the gauge chart. We then add the store-level details with the KPIs icon, giving us more insights as we slice and dice the data. Now, we're adding a new layer of complexity to our analysis, the quarterly's performance. And here's the challenge. The KPIs icons are no longer ideal because with multiple dimensions, things quickly get cluttered and overly colorful making it harder to focus on what really matters. And that's why it's time for a cleaner and more effective solution, the heat map visual. It is perfect for highlighting pattern, spotting outliers, and draw attention to key insight at a glance. And we will be using the conditional formatting to do the job. All right, let's get started. For the holiday rate scenarios, there are several measures that we can use, and we need to check which one is appropriate to display. Now, using the year-to-date measure in this pivot table is redundant because we're only interested in the year-to-date at quarter 3. This information is already being displayed in the Holiday Flex by Store pivot table when we select the year-to-date quarter 3 option from the slicer. Now, if you're thinking about using the Holiday Flex measure in this pivot table, I'll show you why this is not an option. Let me quickly add the Holiday Flex measure to this pivot table. As you can see, when the year-to-date quarter 3 is selected from the slicer, everything is returned as the result of quarter 3 because the internal filter from this measure is the quarter equal to quarter 3, which override the external filter context coming from the same column. In short, year-to-date related measures are great for high-level overview, but they're not suitable when we're breaking things down by quarter, which is what we're doing here. So from both business and technical standpoint, the year-to-date related measure just won't fit in this case. And that leaves us the only one option using the standard holiday rate measure. Let me add the holiday rate measure in real quick. As you can see, this measure is the perfect choice. We can see how holidays usage is distributed across stores and over time. And that kind of visibility really helps the business to quickly spot if there are too many holidays are being taken in the same period so that they can adjust the staffing plan accordingly. Now that we've got the right measure in place, let's go ahead and build our heat map visual. Select the pivot table. Now go to Home, Conditional Format, Color Scale. Now, depending on what you want to highlight, you can choose the color scale that fits with your goal. In our case, we want to check if holidays are taken evenly throughout the year, and we also want to spot any unusual pattern. So I'm going to choose the color scale where higher percentage show up in a darker shade. Since we only select one cell within the pivot table, the conditional format applies to only this specific cell. But with pivot table, I have the option to expand the format range. I'm gonna go with the last option. And just like that, you can immediately see the pattern. Most employees are taking holiday during quarter 4, which could lead to staffing issues or operation disruption. Excel Boba team management team might want to encourage employees to spread their holiday more evenly across the year or take holiday during a less busy period. And one last thing, the grand total column here is a little bit redundant because we already displayed that information in this pivot table. So let's remove it. Click on the pivot table. Now go to Design. In Grand Total, select On for Column Only. And we're done. Pretty straightforward visual, right? Now, I'm going to apply the same heat map visual to other matrix. And just like before, I will remove the grand total column to keep things clean. And then I will apply conditional formatting to each pivot table. All right, let's take a moment to look at the visual and see what the data is telling us. For the absent rate, we want to focus on the high value because the higher the absent rate means more people are not showing up for work. We can see that store 2 and store 3 have the highest absent rates, especially during the last quarter of the year. Now for the compliance rate, this time is the lower value that needs our attention. Again, store 2 and store 3 are showing the lowest compliance rates, which could point to policy or process issues. And finally, for the overtime rate, the higher values mean people are working more extra hours. And once again, store 2 and 3 stand out with consistently high overtime rate compared to the average. So, what is the key takeaway? It looks like store 2 and 3 are facing multiple issues: absence, compliance, and overtime. And that is a clear signal for Excel property management team to take a closer look at what's going on at these stores. Alright, just by using the color to highlight patterns, we've made it easier for user to spot problem and gain immediate insight. This is a great starting point to dig deeper and take action based on the data. Now, as a final touch, I'm going to update this pivot table to show the store name instead of store ID. So, go to pivot table field. Now, kick out the store ID and drag in the store name to the row area. And since we already set the store name to be sorted by the store ID in the data model, we can be confident that the order stayed the same in both pivot tables. Now I'm going to repeat the process to other pivot table. And we now have a clean and clear visual that uses the correct labels, making the message much easier to understand for the end user. In today's videos, you've learned how to use KPI Visual, a powerful and flexible way to track performance within the pivot table. We started by creating a static KPI, then advanced to a dynamic version that adapts to different measures. We also explore another powerful method for visualizing performance across multiple dimensions, the Heatmap visual, which highlight pattern and draw attention to what really matters without overwhelming your dashboards. Now that we built different types of charts and KPI to present our insights, it's time to take things even further. In the next video, we will explore advanced visualization technique, working with images and objects in Excel. You will learn how to bring external images to Excel and how to create custom dynamic objects that respond to changes in your data. This technique will add a whole new level of interactivity and polish your dashboard, making them not just functional, but truly impressive. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends or colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any future episode in this series. And of course, if you have any questions or feedback, drop them in the comment below, and I would love to hear from you. See you in the next video.